Welcome to the Speakeasy podcast. Here we discuss issues important to you, topics that empower the community, and conversations that spark change. This is a safe space where we try to understand and learn from each other. Mahaba-haba pang usapan. Speak true and speak free. It's time we speak easy.
Gone are the days when you can share a sentiment online without a stranger telling you otherwise or calling you out for something that you simply posted. And in some cases, people are no longer passive recipients of information, but are also sharing their own opinions, which may have a positive or negative impact to others. I am Pauline Cucharo Amlings, a beauty queen, and join me on this San Miguelite Speakeasy podcast, a mahaba-habang usapan on drawing the line between calling out and bullying online. Brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Miguelite. We'll be joined by wonderful people today, and may we ask each of you to introduce yourselves.
Hello, hi Pauline, I am Gideon Peña, or just Attorney Gideon across all social media platforms.
Hi, my name is Paula Salvasa. I am a youth pastor. I'm also a senior high school teacher and a podcast producer and host on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.
Hi, Pauline. I'm Christopher Lau. You can call me Chris. I'm a practicing attorney and also a law school professor.
Okay, awesome. So nice meeting all of you. Thank you so much for being here today, for leaving a little bit out of your very busy schedules, I'm sure, to talk with me and have this discussion about so many different things that we'll all be tackling one by one. Living in a digital age where technology makes our lives easier or more efficient, it is crucial to know that possible risks and consequences also come with it. And to start the conversation, let's discuss the concept, definition, and importance of digital citizenship so we can actively and respectfully engage in online spaces. So for all of you, what is digital citizenship?
So when you talk about digital citizenship, of course, when you say citizen, you're a citizen of a country. But the moment you sign up for Facebook, on Instagram, any other social media platform, you become a citizen of the digital world. Right? So you become a part of it. Hence, there's a responsibility that comes with it, or that it entails.
Yeah, I agree with Paula. So you are a member basically of a space. You follow the rules, or in this case, the absence of rules. But I understand certain platforms, they sort of police.
For me, digital citizenship is just like you being in the digital world, but it's not just a mirror reflection of who you are. It's actually like a different reflection. It's a different version of you that's out there because everything is either zoomed in or zoomed out. Everything is magnified, and there's a different persona whenever we're in the digital world.
Right. It's like it gives you the ability now to somehow reinvent yourselves and put yourself in that digital space. But I did like what you said about also somehow having certain responsibilities as a digital citizen as you have your online platforms and become part of all those spaces.
There's a possibility also, like what Attorney Gideon said, that there's this thing that you call a curated version of yourself. What happens is that, you can pose yourself as somebody that you're actually not. Mm-hmm. And that happens all the time.
Paula actually said that it's a curated version of who you are, but sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's the uninhibited side of people. Like, you don't even think about responsibility anymore because sometimes you think that you can't be held liable anyway, especially if you have an anonymous account.
That's true. Because I have students, they have their dump account.
Or like a Finsta. Like your Instagram, yeah.
So they have this, for example, it's Paula Dump. That's my name there. Mm-hmm. And I put everything there that I don't want my family to want to know about me, right? Or the other side of the spectrum where you're innocent or smart girl, but on the other spectrum, there's another version of you that you don't want your family to know about you. That's true. That's the dump side, uninhibited version.
And there are different versions where people won't even know that it's a different side of you because there's really no link to the real person. Yeah, right. It's a totally different person that's shaped by the online user.
So that can be very empowering also for sure.
The good and the bad.
The good and the bad,
at the same time, it can also be very destructive.
There are so many pros and cons of having a public account online, as we've talked about just now. And One of the positive things to note is, of course, that you can express yourself a little bit. You can even put up a version of yourself that no one else knows about. Or you can, like you said, express yourselves without inhibitions. And how about you guys? Like, can you share some other pros, other good qualities or good aspects of having a social media presence?
Pros, well, it's an outlet, definitely. So if you think that you're not being heard, then this is it for you. And it's empowering, as you said. If it helps your business, for example, your business and whatever it is that you're promoting. If you have events or something like that, you can promote, and you can mobilize people also, and you can inspire people. And you can teach people. So these are some of the pros.
Actually, it's something about how you can turn something that's, for example, in my case, I was cyberbullied before. I was canceled even before the entire cancel culture was a thing. There's a tendency where, of course, you would want to like just banish, forget about everything. So there's this song where there's a line that says, I want to go to a place where no one knows my name. So me before, I really was embracing that line. I wanted to go to a place where nobody knows my name. I wanted to banish from the entire digital world. But then I realized the moment that I came to have a relationship with Christ, that's the time when I wanted, like, hey, this particular platform where I was bashed and, I received all the hatred, I can turn it to something good. Then I can reach out to people, maybe raise awareness about cyberbullying or raise awareness about mental health, but you can actually raise awareness about the things that you're healing from or healed from already.
The good side about all these things is the world has become more connected. It's easy to give an update to a loved one who's living on the other side of the world. Unlike before, where you have to wait for a snail mail to be updated, right? So I think that's the best thing that has happened. Everything is within reach if we're going to use it properly.
That's true. In my case, I actually use my social media to earn. So for me, it's a very positive thing. But of course, everything has a downside. And what to you guys are the negative effects of a social media presence?
Well, for me, it has robbed me the joy of enjoying who I really am. It has disconnected me from who I really am. So yes, it has the power to connect us to certain people, to so many people. But at some point, it has caused me to be disconnected from who I really am and robbed me of the joy of enjoying the concept of people treating me as me and not the preconceived notions about me.
That's also very deep.
I know.
That was very deep. But thank you so much for sharing all those insights. I'm sure that it took a lot of courage to get from that point up to where you are now.
You see, that's the point, right? When you're healing or when you have healed from something that maybe had destroyed you in the past, you can channel that into something where you can actually be an instrument of healing for other people.
Cons probably would be, it's the fact that people sometimes forget that when you're online, it's different from when you're in a safe space, or say when you're in a locker room where you can just vent out your frustrations. You can just say whatever's on your mind because you just want to vent out, release it all, right? Sometimes when you post something online and it's already there, even if in a split second you realize it's not something that you should have said, and even if you delete it immediately, people would have had a screenshot already. And like they will punish you for life just because you've said something out of frustration. It's so difficult to bring back whatever is already put out there.
Exactly. Parang once it's posted or once it's out there, wala na.
Wala na,
Someone
wala.
would have already seen it, taken a screenshot,
Right. So
and
it's
will
like
use that against
touch
you.
move.
These pros and these cons, do you think they would apply to everyone, especially since some people choose to hide behind their anonymity online?
To add to the cons, of course, we have fake news now. We need to teach people again critical thinking. And then before they respond, they have to, because in the physical world, you think twice before attacking someone's dignity because, you are within arm's length of a punch, for example. Right. But in this safe space, you think that you're safe and therefore you can, just say whatever you want without any consequence, actually. So these are some of the cons. It applies to everybody, but I worry for the kids who are online because they don't have the mettle to withstand something like this, to weather something like this. I was an adult when, I was bullied, but it was very difficult for me. I had suicidal ideation, and of course, I needed to leave the country because it wasn't safe for me anymore and all that. And I almost didn't take the bar because that was bar season because it was so serious. So I lost my appetite. Imagine that happening to, for example, a minor. He might not have withstood something like that. So I worry for our kids.
Chris, you got bullied online, but did you also get support online? Like, did you receive messages supporting you from people you don't even know?
Mostly hate, but I got the support from the important ones. For example, from family, from people who knew me.
To answer the question, yes, somebody did reach out to me. Well, I experienced a lot of things, like even death threats. So I had suicidal ideations as well, but I wasn't able to go out of the country. Lucky you.
So even in cyberspace, there are good people out there, no?
Yes. So there's this one person on Twitter, because I was advised by a legal counsel to like revive or reactivate my Twitter account because somebody was posing as me. Okay? And so it's gaining more hatred from people, thinking na, she's ganto pa pala, or something like that.
Was this your account that got hacked by someone? Or someone just posing as
It was
you?
my old username that they used.
Oh.
So, and that person has even a lot of followers than I have. I reactivated my account and I was browsing everything. I don't know, I was like a masochist or something, reading all the hatred. And then there's this one tweet. Mm-hmm. I was in my room, I was reading everything, and then I encountered this tweet, and he was like, again, I'm not gonna preach to everybody here, but it was how I experienced it. The person said, you know what, Ate Paula, God loves you so much, and He will restore your life even more abundant. I replied to that tweet, and the most beautiful thing happened. Everyone from their church, the young people, even the pastor, reached out to me, told me that God loves me. Hey, why don't you go to our church? Okay, naiiyak na ako. Why don't you go to our church? And then it's like really the Lord embracing me. They became the hands and feet of Jesus in my life. And it was a community.
When this happened, you mentioned earlier, this was the time when you were not in the cyberspace. You were trying to stay away, right?
Trying to stay away.
So that's also the downside if you're trying to avoid the digital world altogether. Some people say, hindi nila ako mag-Facebook, hindi nila ako mag-Twitter, hindi nila ako mag-Instagram para wala akong problema. But sometimes that's also the downside of it. If people know that you don't have any online presence, they'll be the one to make an online presence for you.
Yes.
And it would be a little too late for you to find out that there's a poster account of you. I actually know a lot of people who experience that. Na ang dami-daming naging fake accounts of people who don't even have any online presence. And sometimes it's more difficult when you don't have an online presence to begin with because people wouldn't be able to distinguish who's the real you.
I also experienced that. Like I've seen some accounts that are me, but in support of me and what I do, of course, but kind of raises a little flag because I'm like, should this worry me at some point? Like, what if they decide to no longer support me? And what if they decide to use that page for something that's negative or something that would actually bring people down? And I also have experienced that it's quite difficult to report those accounts and have them taken down. It's a long process.
I tried so many times, but they're like gremlins, keep
popping out.
Especially for fan accounts, right? Mm-hmm. Social media sites would allow other people to make fan accounts of people. They just have to expressly say that they're a fan account. But as you said, sometimes it's a little difficult when things change, when they suddenly decide that they no longer support you.
Or when they just want to shift their own focus and baka hindi natin alam, it's something that's going to be detrimental to other people's mental health, for example. Mm-hmm. But it's actually nice to also know that even in other people, when we receive hate online, because I've also experienced being body shamed online and online bullying.
You?
Me. Yes.
But yeah, they can be mean all the time.
Yeah.
They can be more mean.
I mean, there's so many people that can be mean online, but there's so many more people who are actually kind and have good intentions. Yes. And it's beautiful that they too take their time to reach out and make sure that somehow you're okay, that you're given a little bit of hope. Yes. And it's those people that actually help you through and help you believe in your own worth rather than what all those haters might say online. So now let's go a little bit out of topic and go to the topic of calling out. When it's a discussion among friends and you said something that might not be true or might even be sensitive, it's unlikely that that person would be canceled, right? Because you're in a group of friends. But how about when it's online? When other people kind of don't agree with what you said, with what you posted, and then call you out, or even that leading to you being canceled?
Basically, the point of calling out is that what's your purpose of calling out that person? If your purpose is to educate that person and maybe help that person to, say, restore himself, redeem that himself, and be able to learn from what he or she has done, then that's a healthy.
That's like constructive calling out.
Yes. But if your purpose is to just banish that person out and to like be punitive about it, there's no healthy side to it. That's not, I believe, the kind of calling out that we're supposed to be doing online. Because we're supposed to be pulling each other up,
Lifting each other up.
Encouraging each other, edifying one another, and not, just destroying one person. Because what if that happens to you? Would you want to experience that firsthand? You wouldn't wanna.
I think we all deserve a chance to redeem ourselves.
Yes, I believe calling out is a chance to redeem yourself. It's all about second chances. Canceling kasi, for me, I believe it's more of alienating a person, very harmful. Whereas when you call out somebody, there's this intention of restoring, building up. It's a community that builds up rather than a community that destroys.
Be part of a community that builds up, not part of a community that cancels.
Yes.
Calling out is, yes, different from, of course, canceling. Yeah, canceling is, you really want to destroy a person, you want him canceled, as opposed to, calling him out, correcting his ways. And of course, as one famous beauty queen also said, when somebody says something, and if I stay silent, what will my followers think about it? I have to educate. So I have to say something. There are people listening, especially if you have a voice, no? Like Attorney Gideon and Paula, they have that voice, and especially you, Pauline.
I just have to clarify on something about that kasi baka may legal implication eh. When you call out someone, it's not just the purpose that you have to look at. You might have the good intention, but how you say it, how you call out someone actually violates the laws. Say it's already sexist, it's already homophobic, or it's already bordering harassing. It's no longer just the purpose that we're looking at. So the means is as important as the intention of what we're saying. So it's both the means and the method that has to be good.
We've already talked about somehow being canceled or getting canceled. But how about just we focus on getting called out? Has any one of you ever been called out? And was it warranted, do you think, in your opinion?
Yes. And then, of course, I acknowledge it. If, for example, I tweeted something about the NDRRMC alert, saying that it's not the flood that's going to kill me, it's this alarm. And then, of course, people...
I'm one of them.
Oh, no. And people, of course...
But not you specifically.
Yeah, and then people called me out that, people are actually dying and this is your concern. So, I think that's warranted. I know the difference and, we make mistakes. And then it's, the important thing is that we are able to acknowledge and then, of course, correct the mistake.
I've been called out several times. And in those moments, the first thing that you have to do is just to pause and ask yourself, are they saying something worthwhile? Are they saying something for your own good? Like sometimes people you don't know, they're just also looking out for you. And it's also good to ask friends about their opinion on the matter before acting impulsively and react accordingly. Like if the calling out has good intentions or it's actually correct, the best thing to do is what Chris said, to acknowledge it and to rectify your error. But if they're calling out just because they don't agree with your politics, they don't agree with your values, neither of you may be wrong, and you both have a right to say the different things that's on your mind.
Right, yeah.
And it's something that you just have to respect. Agree to disagree.
I also remember being called out before. Not necessarily for something I did, but for something I didn't do. I'm blessed to have so many people that support me online. But sometimes I also noticed that support for me means that they would somehow bring other people down in that support of me. And sometimes it would be just so much hate. So I was called out for not telling those supporters to not do that. So I also reflected on that. And I also remembered what that one beauty queen said. Like, if you see something bad happening, it's always better to speak up about it and make sure that other people will know about this as well. So I decided to acknowledge it also and to then take action afterwards and make sure that at least that hatred won't foster and kindness instead will take over. Like always responding with a message of kindness. I like to say, kill it with kindness. I think is always like a very good move.
Your voice matters. I think everyone's voice matters.
Very true. But calling out can also lead to deplatforming or preventing one to have a platform to share his or her own point of view. And do you think that deplatforming someone who made an unpopular opinion is valid?
For me, I would draw a line. If a person is consistently disinforming, not just misinforming, disinforming, there's a conscious, deliberate effort to do a repeated or a series of acts where one is saying things that are untrue, then for me, it's valid to deplatform that person. But if a person is, just so happens, once or twice that they're able to say something that's unverified or untrue, then calling out might be the right approach.
Yes, because I believe when you do that, you're just holding that person accountable as well. That platform, that, like what Peter Parker said,
Great power.
with great power comes great responsibilities. That person who has this platform has this responsibility. How are you going to use it? Are you going to use it wisely? Are you going to use it to edify people? Or are you continuously going to spread this information? Misinformation is about wrong information and whatnot. But when you disinform, you intentionally harm people, destroy another person's reputation. And that's something that we cannot tolerate.
There's actually more power with people coming together when someone is already disinforming or being hateful online versus when someone files a case against that person. Minsan mas mabisa yung reaction ng netizens versus the usual legal means, which would actually take a lot of time. But of course, the best thing is if both things happens. Like if someone is being hateful, someone is saying a lot of things that should not be said, it's really good to hold that person accountable. So both online and then offline in the real world.
Just a cyber information about canceling and calling out. It was actually used for social justice. It's actually rooted, established in the Black movement, where they actually use their voice to correct people, hold people accountable, and they basically use their voice.
I think all of us realize how important responsibility and accountability is when using our social media platforms. And now I want to talk about what cyberbullying is. So how can we tell if you're being cyberbullied or already crossing the line?
We don't want to be technical about it, but we have already malicious imputations. For example, we have laws against libel, slander. So basically, if you want to destroy somebody's reputation, then and then communicate that to a party other than the person you're talking about, then it's part of cyberbullying because you're trying to destroy somebody's dignity. You're not communicating to a third party. You are attacking the person directly. That's a form of harassment. So you are intentionally inflicting emotional, psychological, reputational distress. So that's cyberbullying. Anything that happens in cyberspace is cyberbullying. As Attorney Gideon said, no? If your intention is really, it comes from a malicious place, yes, and then the consequence, the effect is also damaging, then definitely that is actionable, legally or not. But it's definitely something that should be called out, should be corrected, should be, well, I hope not really punished, but because it's important and we want to protect civil liberties.
I'll just chime in on that. So when we talk about the cyber world, when we talk about the cyberspace, we cannot not talk about the balancing of interests of two things. On one hand, people have the right to say what's on their mind. We have freedom of expression. And then on the other hand, people have the right to dignity. So every one of us are entitled to be treated with the kind of dignity that we each deserve, regardless of what we have done. The difficult task is to know hanggang saan ba yung pwede nating sabihin? Are we just calling out? Are we just freely saying what's on our mind? Are we already saying something that should not be said because that's cyberbullying? That's a question, right? So it's a question of, are you just saying something that can be said ordinarily? Does not involve a threat or does not already humiliate another person? So yun yung pinaka-premise ng cyberbullying. Actually, ang mahirap kasi walang uniform definition ng cyberbullying across different laws. So case-to-case basis yung nangyayari. Kung meron mang na-violate na law,
So perhaps that's something that both of you can work on that very technical definition of cyberbullying.
Right.
But yes, with the freedom of speech or freedom of expression also, of course, comes that responsibility and accountability on what you say and how you say it. So we've already talked about cyberbullying. We've already talked about calling out. So how can someone differentiate whether they're being called out or whether they're being cyberbullied? Where do you draw that line?
The test has always been that of a reasonably prudent person. So if that reasonably prudent person...
Alam, mahirap yung reasonably prudent person. Paano ba yun?
Basically, that's the standard. So if somebody...
Like what a normal man would do or feel, right?
Yes, a normal person would feel, yeah. If you want me to know that I miscalculated things, you could have said it in so many ways. I received all the perceived biases. They looked at me as somebody, an immigrant, maybe a Chinese, and then privileged, driving a car, and then buti nga sa'yo, nalunod ka, asked me to commit suicide. So obviously all of these things are toxic, and they come from a malicious place. So I can distinguish.
Now I want to ask you all to put yourselves in the shoes of someone who cyberbullies and ask why it seems to be easier for someone who cyberbullies to attack the person and not the issue at hand.
Well, it's always tempting to focus on the person because I think it's human nature that when you see something, the first thing that you notice about the person is not really the substance of the person, but rather the looks of that person or how that person behaves. And it is magnified online because you don't know that person anyway. So you can just say anything about that person without thinking, makakasalubong ko ba to or makakatrabaho ko ba to somewhere. Kasi there's a presumption that that person is far away from you.
The way I look at it, somehow it seems easier to just point the finger at the person rather than at the issue.
Correct.
I think one more thing in counseling, if you know the term projection, some people, we have our baggages and issues and traumas in life. And if we see someone, at a certain issue like mine, right? It's so easy to just project whatever it is that maybe you have went through as a child and project your traumas or your issues toward that person. Why? Because that person's not gonna react. You saw that person online. Not gonna retaliate, not gonna react, and it gives you somehow a sense of, satisfaction that you were able to release it right then and there.
We have this expression, hit them where it hurts. And I think the personal is always more effective. That's why when we run out of arguments, for example, that's what we do. I mean, as Attorney Gideon said, it's easier that way. It's human nature as well. And then not everybody is as learned, for example. So we hit them where it hurts.
But even sometimes the learned can also do that.
Because of the emotions, if you don't, rein in the emotions, and that's definitely, we're not above something like that. It's happened to all of us.
When it comes to our emotions and sometimes getting carried away, one tip that a friend also told me is that if it gets too overwhelming, take a 10-minute break, let it all sink in, then decide what you're going to do next. Yes, take deep breaths. Do not, in that spur of a moment with all those emotions, click that button after you've typed everything. Take that time for yourself also to reflect on what's going on and also your thoughts about it, because sometimes your thoughts might be raging way beyond the actual issue or person at hand, and you might be creating an even bigger issue out of it.
You said kill them with kindness, right? We have to remember that people are people. So this person might be going through something. We don't know that. Maybe this person is, has mental conditions, for example, that we really have to consider, because mental health isn't something that are up to speed about, and that people do suffer from that. So when we just don't take a video of somebody who is imploding right there and then, because that person might be suffering from some sort of mental condition. And I think that's something we need to educate the people about.
I think one more thing that I have to add, it's really vital in counseling, setting healthy boundaries. Mm-hmm. If a person doesn't know how to set healthy boundaries for himself, you wouldn't be able to know how to respect the boundaries of other people. And at the same time, you will start behaving in a way that's not being respectful of other people's boundaries. Right. Hence, you attack the person's character instead of dealing with what really happened and applying a solution to that.
It happens also with friends. Minsan, di ba, pag may ginawa sa'yong masama yung kaibigan mo, the first thing that you would say is not normally what your friend did. It's actually a lot of other things.
A lot of adjectives towards that friend.
Right. It's something that's just a reflection of what happens in the real world or in the physical world. Parang minsan, Yung mga hindi mo nasasabi from before, pag may ginawa sa'yo yung kaibigan mo, biglang lahat nauungkat. So the same thing with online, minsan, your hate towards that person is not more on what that person said currently, but rather what that person stands for. So parang ginagawa mo lang springboard yung sinabi niya to call that person out for something else.
Or with whom is that person's associated.
Yeah, sometimes, oo, yun yung masakit eh, no? Just because you're associated with someone or with something, bigla kang aawayin. Parang nagkaroon lang ng opportunity because of what you said.
So there's so many instances where this happened, right? Where the person is being attacked, but not the issue at hand. Like, for example, a content creator is repeatedly being bullied or called out, or a netizen continues to call out or bully others. So how can we draw the line, and how can we manage this for both the person being called out or bullied and the one calling out or bullying others?
Well, the law can only do so much. So I always tell my students, right, that law is one of the social techniques, no, or collective efforts to realize our goals as a society, for example, to discharge social functions. We have education also. We have religion also. So equally potent. We have to teach our kids early on the value of critical thinking, that they should respect other people, that they should obviously value human dignity. So I think it starts at school and then the home as well. So education is important. Law is curative. Education is, for me, our best bet.
I agree with education, but at the same time, sometimes being as a teacher, it makes me sad because not everyone has access to quality education, right? So what do we do about that?
This is something the system somehow needs to, I guess, work on. It's going to be a collective and community effort, I guess,
yes.
when it comes to this. How does cyberbullying affect the person? How did it affect you?
Well, considering the amount of hate I received, I think nobody is built for something like that. There's so much negativity. I always say this, because of the hate, I felt like I was attacked and therefore the body was under attack. I wasn't physically mauled, but the effect was the same. So I was bleeding in and out. So I was coughing blood, excreting blood. My experience tells me that there is a link between the spirit and matter, mind and body. I lost my appetite, so I wasn't really eating, drinking, probably contributed to the expulsion of blood. Then, of course, I left the country. I was in a bad shape, absolutely. For a person who doesn't have, for example, pedigree, wealth, generational wealth, which I built from the ground up. So it was all that I had, and it was my only reason for waking up every day. And for that to be taken away from me overnight, thought that I had nothing. And for you to feel that way, it's just so difficult for all of us. Like, to feel so worthless. I was in no position to take the bar exams at the time, but thanks to the temples of Chiang Mai, Thailand, the monks really told me, you have to let go of all worldly things, including reputation. So that was really quite boxing and limiting. So I let go of that. I felt like a different person now, with limitless potential.
For me, my experience being cyberbullied, I had suicidal ideation as well. I was trying to write my thesis because I was graduating. I wasn't able to really focus on it. And one of the panelists from our defense helped me write an autoethnography. So I wrote a thesis. The title was "I'm a Liar, an autoethnography on cyberbullying." And so I was able to graduate. So the Lord really turned everything for the good. Who would have thought na makakasulat ako ng thesis about my experience and everything that I posted online, the memes, the video itself, everything. Yes,
Wow.
for the thesis.
You used your narrative and became stronger out of it.
For you and Chris, you were able to make something good out of your experience. Unfortunately, for a lot of people out there, it's not the case. Like, once someone is cyberbullied, that person is forever damaged. And not all people would have the courage to even seek help.
Easy to talk about your weaknesses, and then, of course, senior attorneys tell me, you should stop these talks. You should stop sharing your weaknesses. It's not good. It affects your employment, your opportunities, your career trajectory, and stuff like that. But the pressure. You have to be perfect all the time. For me, I'd rather inspire I'd rather reach out to people, and we have to stop this constant search for perfection, especially amongst our kids. We have to make room for imperfection, and the kids should know that it's okay to be imperfect. The message to the kids is that what matters is that you're only as good as your last work. So don't be afraid of imperfections. At the end of the day, you'll be judged according to the work and not according to perfections. It's how to overcome the imperfections. And if these imperfections don't really affect the work quality, then I'm not conservative that way. I don't join the bandwagon, for example. I am going to hire, for example, or choose the candidate or the person who fits the job description rather than fit my biases, whatever.
One last thing, I read something. Don't you know that every time you share your weakness, your healing journey, you actually heal. It's a way for you to actually heal. And I realize that it's so true. Because every time I share my testimony, I do talks, I do preachings, and I tell them about my healing journey, like what I'm doing right now. It gives me a sense of, hey, this is who I am before, who I was. And I have seen the improvement, how God has changed my life. And it gives me so much courage to face another day and be maybe a sense or a beacon of hope to another person.
There was also a quote that I read online, and it said, avoidance feeds anxiety.
Yes.
So if you also don't acknowledge your own weaknesses, how can you overcome them? How can you become better? And when it comes to sharing your own personal stories, I also have that. I would share my own stories about being bullied, and I'd remember the first few times that I'd talk about it, I'd be crying. I'd be crying my eyes and my heart out. And after doing it over and over again, somehow I find strength in my own story, and I no longer cry as much. I still do a little bit, but not as much. So we find strength in being able to share what has happened to us, and then also find strength in the fact that people then can find strength in that too, because they might be going through the same. And it's only by sharing those weaknesses that they somehow get to relate, that they somehow get to maybe get some tidbits of knowledge or hope even on how they can cope. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing your journey. Now, Attorney Gideon, what can people do if they think they're being bullied online? Like, how do we make cyberbullies accountable?
It depends with how immediate you want them to be made accountable. Like, if you want something that's immediate, you also do it online through the platform by which you were bullied. So it can be of two things. Sometimes you just have to keep quiet, let the rest of the world see what the bully is doing, and they're the ones who's going to correct that person. Sometimes it happens. But there are also times when you have to speak out for yourself. When no one else is speaking up for you, it's also your responsibility to yourself to speak up. And then, of course, there are the other ways. Yung nasabi nga kanina ni Attorney Chris, there's the legal channel.
I like what you said about speaking up. Like, speaking up for yourself is somehow, I think, also showing kindness to yourself, to not allow all that negativity to be taken in by you, to allow that to somehow affect you or overwhelm you.
We really have to do our part. Like as what Attorney Gideon said, we have to report abuses, for example, and then of course, in our own spaces, we have to call out, injustices we have to call out.
I think for me, I do grace. Before, I have never understand the process of forgiveness is different from, them being held accountable for their actions. Now I know that, but me, I just do grace. I don't do me, I do grace. I give back. I reach out young people as a youth pastor. I teach high school student because I want them not to experience what I have experienced, and at the same time educate them so that they don't do that to other people. If no one's gonna teach them that, then who will? Exactly. If they're not receiving that kind of education at home, then who will? I would always tell them, I don't think I failed as a teacher if you didn't pass my exams, but I think I failed as a teacher if you haven't become respectful and kind and empathetic and compassionate toward other people.
So I think one of the key messages today also is that having a social media presence comes responsibility, accountability, but perhaps now we can also add consideration, especially consideration to other people's feelings, to realize also how much power there is in the words that we use and how we use them, both good and bad, of course. And this was such an insightful discussion. I really want to thank each and every one of you for sharing so much of your personal experiences. I know that it's difficult and it takes so much courage. So daghang salamat. Thank you so much for for doing that. Now, before we end, can I please get your parting shots on this topic? And let's start with Attorney Gideon.
For me, it's just what you put out there basically goes back. So be careful of who you are as a person, both in the physical realm and in the digital space. Everything will come back to you.
For me, I would always tell people every time I get to be asked about it, be kind to yourself. Because the first person that has to be kind to yourself is you.
And then for me, everything has a consequence.
Thank you. That's so true. Everything has a consequence. And I also keep telling that myself also. Like, I have to be kind to me first before I can radiate or bring that out to other people. Thank you so much for that. And one thing I also learned today is, of course, we talked about the power of words. And I realize now even more that when it comes to these situations, we all have a choice. Kill it with silence or kill it with kindness. And I'd prefer the latter. Thank you so much for joining our San Miglite Speakeasy podcast, a mahaba-habang usapan on drawing the line between calling outs and bullying online, brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Miglite. Thank you for hanging out with us, and remember to always treat everyone with respect, whether online or offline. Have a great day, everyone.